So let's check a little bit what is compilers and runtime so we're just on the same page, and let's see how the errors are shown to us and how we get, well, not yet to fixing, but how we understand it and we deal with them. Okay, so in the first part, let's check out what are compiler errors. Compiler errors are the best ones. They're the easiest one. Why? Because we get a big red squiggly line whenever we do a mistake, such as an example, we forgot to put the semicolon to end our statement. So over here, if I put my mouse over it, it says I need a semicolon. It's expected here. And it will even do it for you by pressing insert, right? So it gets highlighted with red here, and we get it on our little navigation tool thing, our scroll bar. There we go. Okay, so that's an easy one for compiler, and it goes further and further. You might have also seen sometimes you might have misspelled scanner, and rather than saying scanner with an R, you said scan. And then you try to do something. Notice again, the compiler is like, hey, I know you might be making a mistake. The IntelliSense is trying to help you out, but we're going to say, well, no, that's not my mistake. That's your problem. And again, you could see the red. And again, if you try to run it, it's going to say, well, you can't compile this, so you need to fix this error. Again, it's going to tell you exactly what you need to do, exactly at what lines, and what's going on. So inside this runtime errors.java file that I created, at line 8 to maybe line 9, because I don't know why it says 9 here, but at line 8, I cannot find this symbol. So scan does not exist. Or you make sure that you do a mistake, etc., etc. Now you have to investigate, figure out what the problem is. I noticed that I forgot to put R. Now, the thing about these compile errors, you need to read them. Don't just jump the gun. These compile errors are, well, as our code will get bigger and it becomes more complicated, these compile errors are not going to change that much. So it's going to make more sense to us if we start learning what they represent or mean at an early stage rather than when we're at the later stage where we're doing these really complicated techniques to utilize our code. Okay. Now, for runtime errors, if you remember what we talked about, this is the ones where the compiler, can't really know until runtime. And sometimes we know that it's possible that it will happen. We just can't really avoid it. We could just deal with it. So let's try some of these type of errors. So let's say as an example, we could do an easy one that everyone should know, divide by 0. The way the computer is made, it can't really divide by 0, right? We're not going to talk about why I can't divide by 0, at least not in this video. But if you look over here, this is a bit interesting. In this case, dividing by 0 is bad, and the compiler, or in this case your IDE, kind of sees it. The compiler doesn't see it. Let me say it better. The compiler will go through everything and compile it. And when it runs it is when it's going to see that issue. But in this case, the IDE is giving us a little warning here. So you can see it's in yellow highlight. You're going to get a numeric overflow in this expression. Is it good to divide by 0? Right? If you put your mouse over it, you got division by 0. If I run this application, you're going to get a runtime exception. You're going to get an exception error. And again, the exception, just like the compiler, are not too hard, but still kind of easy to deal with. As in, it will tell you exactly which file. You could see my code is in blue, not this thing. My code is in blue, and it's a clickable link. Not only does it tell me the file name, it also tells me the line number. So at line 9, I'm trying to do something, which is basically divide by 0. So what you're seeing here is an exception error, which gives you a stacked trace. So it tells you at what moment it happened, at what line it happened. And this stacked trace right now it's pretty simple, but later on you're going to see it could be hundreds of things in there. We're going to talk about it. So this is divide by 0. Let's try something else. I'm going to try and do some familiar ones that you might see more often. What if, let's say as a question, I ask the user, enter a number, all right? Or let's say enter an integer, right? This is pretty straightforward, but then the user, let's say we're going to say, give me an int, a, right? But then the user, he goes ahead and doesn't send you an int, but sends you something else. So notice here, my code is expecting an integer, but then when we ask the user to run it, let's say I'm the user, you can't expect them to do correctly. It's either they're going to try to hack your thing or they're just plain old stupid. It doesn't matter which one they are. You need to manage that. You need to make sure your code is foolproof. Because the moment your app crashes is the moment they go to the next app. So in this case, rather than giving it an integer, I wrote some strings in there and I press enter. Again, an exception happened. Now look at this stack trace is much different than our previous one. In this stack trace, we have a lot of other code. So a lot of other lines. The stack trace works from bottom to top. So at this line, all of this thing happened. At line 9, right, line 9, I try to call this method called nextInt. Inside the method nextInt, at line 2212, I called this other nextInt at line 2258, which called another method called next, which is line 1594, which went to this one, throw for line 939. Now, I was just giving you the direction that this stack is going. However, you don't need to care about this gray part. All the stuff that's in gray is not your code. These are the built-in code, and we're going to navigate towards that direction. What you care for is to find these blue line codes. The blue ones are basically telling you that's your code, and that's where the error is happening from. So there's kind of an expectation that the built-in code or the codes that you're utilizing are going to be foolproof. Okay, and at this level, we're always going to consider them as really good, foolproof, no issue. Now, this tells us where the issue is. That's the beginning of, in this case, the beginning of our stack. And the first part, where it says exception, that's telling us what the issue is. And if you look at the name here, Java util input mismatch exception. So in this case, we got a string when we were expecting a integer. All right. So I'm not going to show you how to deal with this yet. We're going to do it in the next video or the one after that. I kind of planned it in a couple of videos, okay? But we need to be able to see these errors. Now, again, if we click on this, we could see nextInt has been called. And if we go into the next one, so we could either hold down Control here or click on the scanner Java 2212. I'm just going to do it from here. You could see it's the beginning of 2211. That's the method we called, right? And inside that method, 2212, this line, it's going to call this other nextInt, as we could see here. And because there's no input, we got a default radix, whatever that is. We click on that. We're at 2246. So here it says the next part, where it got stuck, it's at 2258. So even though we started 2246, it did this line, it did this line. All of these were good until the moment it reached line 58, and that's here. So the moment it was trying to do this line, it's where it broke. Again, don't read too much of the code. It doesn't really matter right now. I'm just showing you how this navigation works. So at this line 2258, it called another method called next. We could see that here. So again, I'm going to go to that method, line 1572. Notice that it break at 1594. So again, these were good. It was okay. It was okay. And when it got to 94, this is the moment it calls another method, throw 4. And we could see that here. So we go there. And line 934, but here it says the issue is at 939. So it goes down, and this is the moment our exception has been thrown. Okay. Did you need to do that? No, I was just showing you how your code works. This is the stack, the method calls. So this called that, this called that, this called that, and it reached here. And the moment it reached here, this exception was thrown, this runtime issue. Okay. Again, none of this is our code. We can't really change them. It's all file read only. So what we need to do is make sure that this part, there's no issues. Okay. For now, this is fine. We're going to leave it there. We're going to manage this in a few videos. Another exception I want you to see is one that, again, you're used to, is what if we had an int array, my array, and it's a new int of size, let's say 3. So this is another common one that you should be seeing now as a beginner. So let's say, I'm going to say a while true. And while that thing is happening, I want to get an input. And that input, I'm going to put it inside my array. So let's keep track of a position, and position starts at 0. And we're going to put that A inside my array. So my array at position equals A. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now the problem comes down to what happens when we are past the size of our array. On the first one, I put 5. We're still good. The first position of my array has the value 5. The second one, 7. The third one, 2. And now the fourth one, remember our array size is 3, but we're at position 0, 1, 2, and we're at position 3 now. I put, let's say, any value, let's say 25. Oh, we're okay. That's interesting. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change the position. All right, there we go. So let's say ++ position. Okay, I forgot to change position, so we were always changing the value of position 0. That's why there was no issues. Again, that would be a logic error. See, logic errors are the worst. So 2, 5, 8, let's say 23. And again, we got an exception. In this case, array index out of bounds, which is a more common one that we would see. And in this case, it says index 3 out of bounds for a length of 3. Notice again, the exception tells you almost everything you need to know to fix that error, right? Now, just a final reminder, compiler errors are great because it happens when we are programming and building our application. Runtime errors are horrible because it happens when the user is utilizing it and it crashes their app. And now they have to decide, am I going to continue using your app or am I going to the next one? See you guys in the next video.